Hi, my name is Jack from Painted Legion. Today we're going to have a look at how to paint Hive Fleet Kronos. This is a really quick scheme. This one took me about 40 minutes to do and I wasn't trying to be quick, so definitely one you could use to speed paint your army. If you're new to my channel, I've been slowly working my way through all the Tyranid Hive Fleets to give schemes that are easy to achieve and give you great looking models. You can see a few of those on screen now, and if you'd like to check those out, I'll leave a link to the playlist in the cards for this video. Anyway, for Hive Fleet Kronos, we're going to start with a black prime model, and if you look at the artwork for Hive Fleet Kronos, their main flesh color is black. It's a very slightly brown black, and it's a cool brown black as well. So we're going to start off with a heavy dry brush of Dryad bark. This will leave the recessed details in black, giving definition to the flesh, and still giving the idea that it is black skin, but we'll get the start of that color. And then we're going with a lighter dry brush of Gorthor brown, making sure we hit all the raised details, and pick out all the interesting details, especially the ones that would be touched by light. And there's that layer done. It looks like we've got quite a bright brown here, but actually once we paint the blue gun and the red carapace, it'll start to look darker than it actually does now. And because it's not really a black brown, it's very slightly grey as well. We're going to do Storm Vermin Fur, which is very slightly brown. We're going to do a really light dry brush of Storm Vermin Fur to shift it a little further away from looking like a woody color back to a sort of brown black flesh, and also to pick out those most raised details. You can see here I've done some funky stuff with the carapace. It's because I had this brilliant idea to do Kronos a little bit differently. I was going to go in with Mournfang brown and then into Mephiston red, and when I ended up doing it, I hated it. I didn't like it at all, so I'm going to walk that one back. So the next step will be to take Gavelback red and base coat all of that chitin, which I've done there. Then I'm going to grab Black Templar contrast, and I'm going to paint this into the crevices of the chitin. This will give us some depth and definition between each of the armor plates and help that red to really stand out. When you're doing this, make sure that you don't have too much on your brush. You can see there I'm wiping off the excess on my thumbnail, and my brush strokes are kind of flowing from the center of the carapace into the crevices, so that when our brush leaves the model, the brush will have been touching where we want the darkest parts to be. And this will be because when the brush comes off the model, it's going to leave the most pigment there. And just quickly whilst we're doing this, I do commissions, so if you want me to paint some models for you, then send me a message on Instagram. Once we're done with that, we'll grab Corn Red, and we're going to use a feathering technique to highlight this armor. So what you're going to do is you grab your brush, and you're going to hold it somewhere between 45 degrees and perpendicular to the model. And you're going to use a quick feathering motion to draw out these little striations on the edge of the armor. This is really good for Tyranids. It's an amazing way to give detail to those armor panels, especially in the older models. It's a lot of empty space. These newer models don't suffer too much from that because they're so well sculpted, but still something that makes them stand out, gives them that organic look, and really sells the idea that these are alien creatures. I'm not watering down my paint at all with this. I'm putting it on my wet palette, so I'm getting a little bit of water from the wet palette into my Corn Red, but that's because my Corn Red's quite old. If you've got a fairly new pot of Corn Red, you can just use that neat, don't worry about it too much. So use it neat, make sure that you draw your brush back onto your palette so that you get a lot of the paint off. You don't want too much paint on your brush, and then you can go in and do this feathering motion. And that's how you're going to get thin lines between each of your brush strokes. Like I said, this is a really important technique to learn for Tyranids, and once you get really good at it, it's very quick, arguably quicker than if you were to edge highlight all of these. And after that, we're going to grab Wazdaka red, sticking to this sort of cooler red color, this sort of cold red color, and we're going to do the same feathering motion, but we're going to do it a lot more sparingly. You can see I'm not putting the lines as close together, I'm spacing them out a bit more, and this is going to give us more of an idea that this is an organically grown object that's got chips and cracks in it. It's not completely flat, like a bone or a fingernail. Take your time with this step. This is what's going to make it really stand out. It's probably the most important part of this entire scheme. And there we are. That's what it's going to look like when we're done. To be honest, if you were to just paint in the gun, you could call that model done, and it would look really good next to all your other models. But we're going to do a bit more detail. So we're going to paint in the gun to begin with the fang. I'm going to put this all over the gun, the hooves, and the talons. Don't be shy with this step. You probably need about 2 coats to get a strong coat over the black. Try to leave the vents on the gun black, but don't worry too much if you go into those. You can always go back and clean that up later. It'll just make painting those vents a little easier later on. We're going to grab Druchii Violet, and this is going to give that blue a bit more of an organic feel. Obviously, purple is a mixture of red and blue. So by adding a little bit of red into our color here, it'll give it a slightly more organic feel, which is good because blue, it can be tough to make blue look organic. I'm going to grab Rust Grey, and we're going to highlight all the blue parts. Now, I don't think my camera ever actually gains focus for this bit. I'm sorry about that. But if you want to know a bit more about where to place those highlights, go have a look at the finished pictures that I'll put at the end of this video. But I've also got them on my Instagram if you want to check them out there. All right, and that's those done. So now we're going to move on to grabbing Rock Grey. You could use pretty much any off-white if you wanted. I use Rock Grey because I like the way it behaves when you don't have much on your brush. So we're going to color in the tongue, the eyes, and the vents for this model. So once we've done the eyes, the tongue, and all the vents, we will go in with Volupus Pink, and making sure we've not got too much on our brush. We're just going to paint that all into those areas where we've painted with that Rock Grey. Except for the eyes, we're going to leave the eyes and paint those a different color towards the end. Once you've done that, we're going to finish off some of the details. We're going to grab Xandri Dust and just paint a line on each of the teeth, making sure that we leave a black line between each tooth. Give definition. And Screaming Skull, we'll do a dot on the end of each of those teeth to make them look sharp. And then finally we'll grab Troll Slayer Orange, and we're going to paint the eyes. I do almost all of my eyes for Tyranids this way. I think they look really cool when they've got this color, and it matches with pretty much every scheme. So we're going to give a nice thin layer onto the eye on the gun there. You might need to do 2 or 3 layers on the gun. With the eye on the termagant, it's so small you can get away with probably just one fairly thick layer. Then we're going to highlight each of those eyes with a dot of Uriel Yellow. There we are, that's the model all done. Nice and quick one for you there. If you want to have a look at how I've done some other of the Tyranid schemes, the playlist that I was talking about earlier is linked on the right there. I've also done a tutorial for my custom Space Marine chapter if you'd like to check that video out as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.